And welcome everybody, and welcome to the program. Today it is my pleasure to welcome Valerie Daggett. Valerie is a professor of bioengineering at the University of Washington. She's also the founder and CEO of AltPep. And today we're going to learn a little bit about her journey and what motivated her in creating this company that is addressing a really, really serious problem, which is that of neurodegenerative diseases, which is affecting a growing segment of our population. So to start with, Valerie, we like to have some of the origin story about what happened. So what was appealing to you when you were growing up in terms of biology?
Well, thank you for having me. And so growing up, I didn't know about bioengineering at that point. So what really, I guess, what I was most excited about back when was math. And then I followed through into moving towards physics because it was more, describing the world and using math, and into chemistry and looking at atoms and such. And so it was kind of a long journey because the things I wanted to do couldn't be done at that time. So I became interested in proteins, and I became interested in quantum mechanics, but couldn't put them together. So I had to do, in undergrad, I did a thesis on protein folding and doing experimental work, and was really left with this taste of, well, I want to see it. How do we see these things? And so that's really what it came to, is wanting to see what's going on with these atomic structures.
And talking about this, you were a pioneer in blending computation with structural biology. And it was at a time where it was a number of years ago. We're not going to say how long, but you and I have both been there. How did you decide to go on that path?
It really was a matter of, I fell in love with this idea of understanding how proteins move and how they exert their function. And I was, when you look at it experimentally, you get kind of one side or the other. You see it before it starts, you see it after a process finishes. And I wanted to know what was going on in between. And this may sound disconnected, but it's absolutely the thread that's been running through my work for 30 years. And it's what's led to AltPep. There was a paper early on when I first started my lab or right before, I was still at Stanford. And there was this paper on amyloid beta peptide. And it was, something of an artifact. It was a fragment. It was in an organic solvent. It was all these things. But it piqued my interest because I just developed this approach of looking at protein unfolding to characterize these events. And we could track the process. And here you have this case where it's linked to disease. And that's when it was like, okay, that's what I want to do. We can take our methods we've developed for protein folding and unfolding and apply them to amyloid diseases.
So was there something that motivated this, your interest in amyloid diseases? Many of us, have family members who have been afflicted by some of these diseases. And this is a strong motivator for scientists to try to alleviate, these effects, which are devastating. Is it something that you experienced?
It's something I've experienced more recently with a family member, but back when I started, no, because amyloid diseases, they were really just coming on the scene. People knew about Alzheimer's, a handful of others, but now there are over 70 amyloid diseases. So it really was very early in the late 80s, early 90s, and when this was beginning. And so what struck me, it was sort of a different motivation in a sense. I mean, one, it was a way, there were difficulties with characterizing the process. People were trying, and experimentally it just couldn't be done, and thought our methods could help with this. But it also was being supported by federal funds, and realizing that you really, I had a general medicine sciences grant for 20 years from NIH to study protein unfolding and develop these methods. And you're always making these pleas that you are doing work that's going to help with, patients later, benefit human health in the human condition. And then you realize you've been doing it a long time, and who are you helping? And you feel felt I had to give back, because along the way we made a discovery, and you hit the point where you just say, I want my work to mean something. And so you have to translate it out.
When did you decide to transition from, the scientific discovery to let me get this out to the market? Let me start a company.
So what really changed was, in doing these computer simulations, we did it for a number of different proteins, and we found that they all would funnel through a non-standard new protein structure, and then was left with, well, what do we do with this? And so the idea is, if they're all going through this structure and it's not a normal protein structure, then we have an opportunity here to design compounds to neutralize this toxic species and detect it. So that was the idea. But this was many, many years ago, and I didn't have the facilities to go after this. And at that point, that's when I became a bioengineer. I switched and made a lateral move to the bioengineering department, got a little wet lab space, and shifted over. And I find the mindset so different. So I've been a conventional biophysicist, which means you look deeper and deeper. And bioengineers were like, well, don't worry about it. Go make it. Go design something. Go. And so that's really when things changed, because then we could say, okay, we've got this interesting finding. Now let's make sure it's not a computer artifact. And the same compounds we were then designing in silico, ranking, ordering, and then making synthetically, they're peptide based. Then we could use those to both characterize the structure, validate it, but they also became our platform technology for therapeutics and diagnostics. And so it really came around, and then we had a way to move forward.
So you would say that it is your colleagues or other entrepreneurs in the bioengineering departments, or anybody else that influenced that decision for you to start the company?
So as far as starting the company, I've been wanting to do it for a while, and I've been involved with CoMotion for many years. And it's almost embarrassing to say how long, because it took us so long. But part of it was because of IP issues. And so it took a long time to get our patents that cover the structure, because usually you go by composition of matter. And we said, no, this is based on structure, and we template in this structure. We can change the sequence at will for different applications, different amyloid diseases. And so we couldn't spin out until that was in place. And so it took many, many years. So along the way, I had different handlers at CoMotion that would come even to our group meetings, Alan Yen, Rowie now, other people who really were supportive. CoMotion has supported us in many ways, financially, supporting individuals, kind of getting us through that valley of death, but also early on with connecting us up with people in the Foster School and the Burke entrepreneurial program, and working with some students during the summer who would do analyses for us and kind of teach us about those things. So there was a lot going on.
And talking about it, generally a lot of faculty are hesitant to become CEO of their own spin-offs, right? You decided to do so. Could you explain us why you decided to do so?
Yeah, that's a great question. And so when we finally did spin out, we started getting up and running, got some seed funding, and then COVID hit. And then we kind of hunkered down. And so there wasn't really space to hire people, to bring in more people, that sort of thing. And then everything slowed down for quite a while. And then all of a sudden things were picking up, went into fundraising efforts via Zoom and connecting with people. And it just kind of took off. And I realized, I'm liking this. I want to be involved in having a say in how this goes. And I don't want to just, I'd had several VCs over the years contact me who wanted to help me and, take over the company and put somebody, and then I said, no, we've got too much potential here. There are over 70 amyloid diseases. This affects 1 billion people worldwide. I don't want somebody to take it for one particular application and then close off the technology for other diseases and such. And I really wanted to, I was committed to both diagnostics and therapeutics. And usually people want to pick one and pigeonhole, just a variety of things that came at it. And I realized I just wanted to be involved. And it's, you hit a point too, I'm not getting any younger. I want to see this happen. And I'm passionate about it. And it's been a learning experience, but I have a really great team and board and all kinds of people. So I'm not doing it by myself.
Absolutely. And we know actually, that throughout the process, you talked for, the many decades that led to the creation of AltPep. But, really there are failures that happen along the way. And we know that it's part of the journey, and we know that you'll learn a lot from these failures. Could you tell us about potential failures that happen along your journey and what you learned from them?
Yeah, well, you're going to jinx this. We haven't had any major failures
That is
yet.
great.
Pretty well. I'd say we were really held up by COVID for sure. We're not unique, obviously, but that really set us back a long time. And then we ended up getting our Series A funding at the end of the year, 2020. And so I feel like we just spun out in January, and then we got space, and people usually talk about focus on money, but you can have money, but you can't spend if you don't have space to hire people and have, bench top for your equipment and such. And so all that came together for us in 2021. And so we're really so new.
Do you have any concern? There's a lot of competing technologies out there in terms of neurodegeneration, and this has been a difficult field in terms of therapeutic development. What are your thoughts?
Yes, it has been very difficult, and there have been a lot of failures. And so the biggest challenge was getting people not to both answer a call and not shut the door in your face, because there really is a knee-jerk reaction to the amyloid beta, the amyloid area. There have been so many failed clinical trials. And my thoughts are they're going after essentially the wrong targets. And so I'd say there have been a lot of efforts in this area, and there's the tendency, because of the failures, to think that anything focusing on the amyloid beta peptide is going to have, follow the same fate.
So when you raised your Series A, you felt that you had to spend a lot of time educating the VCs that invested in your startup?
Well, so it went on for a few months, talking to different VC groups. And then once we kind of settled in, it actually went remarkably fast, probably about a month or so, or it was very, very fast. And then we have two primary investors, and they are very, very excited about it and very interested in it moving faster. And right now, in part because of Biogen and others, it's a really exciting place to be. Now, it's also a little scary because there's just so much going on, and there's such a push for moving forward with things, but it kind of opened the floodgate a bit. And so, and with the issues with the Biogen product, I mean, you also want to not miss your window and wait too long before things may come crashing down again.
Absolutely. And for those of you who are not familiar about the Biogen product, this is a recently approved monoclonal antibody that I believe recognize a particular form of the amyloid peptide. Is that correct?
So, right. So theirs is, it was grown against the amyloid plaques protofibrils, so the beta structure. It's not the same target we're
right.
after. Yep.
Absolutely. So what's next for AltPep? I mean, everything seems to be, rolling forward and accelerating. This is exciting.
It is. It is. So we are right now, during COVID, we had to put our therapeutic efforts on hold. We just didn't have the capacity to do it. So we really focused on diagnostics, which is also critical because what's the point of creating a therapeutic that you can get in there earlier if you don't have a way to identify the patients? And so they really go hand in hand. So the diagnostic, in a sense, needs to precede it anyway, so that we can then identify patients who are already incubating the disease and have the toxic oligomers before further damage is done. So we focused on that, and we're working further so that was in the academic lab, and now it's translated over to AltPep and working on developing a product.
And so you think, a lot of people want to know, for example, that they might develop Alzheimer's disease or other type of neurodegeneration early on. And I think it is important to be able, to catch these things as early as possible. Do you have a feel for how far ahead your tools might work in terms of diagnosing the disease?
Yeah, so we've been doing studies with colleagues here at UW Medicine and the VA, and looking at banked older samples where they've been followed, and we have some idea, can reach back in time to try to answer your question. And we have small numbers, but our test is able to detect people in plasma, so not just CSF. We've now moved to plasma. Can detect people prior to having any symptoms and prior to changes in other biomarkers.
So what would be your advice to budding entrepreneur, either postdocs in research, groups or even PIs?
So yeah, my advice is, let's see. In some sense, my advice is based on being older. And so you start, the clock is different when you've been doing this a long time, and you just say, I want this to happen now. And so I was not keen on some of the approaches many people go with, which is, SBIRs. I've been doing grants my whole academic life, and it's a long, slow process. It's a lot of rejection. And if you're really trying to compete in a very crowded space, I just don't think you can wait a year or two to get an SBIR that's a small amount of money to really get you off the ground. And so I'm more an advocate. I know a lot of people are get nervous about it, but going with VCs, where particularly the right ones, where you can have a smaller piece of the pie, but you have an improved chance of its success, I think. And so I was a little, I was quite impressed with many of the VCs that we met with. So I was told, well, you're a scientist, you can't be a CEO, and you don't know how to talk to business people and this sort of thing. And I found the good VC firms, they have a lot of scientists on board, and we were having science talks. We were not, that's how we got our Series A funding. It was through a scientist talking to their analysts, their PhDs.
And they really want to move things forward as well. So if you're looking at making an impact, via deployment or commercialization, they really want your company to succeed. That's very exciting. So yeah, that is fantastic, Valerie. Thank you so much for sharing this time with us. Do you have any other parting comments that you would like to make about your innovation journey?
It's been a fantastic journey, because it's really got so many aspects to it, but it's so exciting to discover something and then really study it, and then get to the point where you think it can really help people, and to move that through. And we're still early in these efforts, but I'm very excited about the prospects of AltPep and really having a big impact. And so to those budding entrepreneurs, I just say, go for it. It's really an exciting thing. It's quite a ride.
Super. Well, thank you very much for sharing your thoughts, your experience, and your knowledge with us. That was really informative. I'm very excited about AltPep. I look forward to these diagnostics and therapeutics to roll out and to make a difference. So thank you very much, Valerie. We appreciate your time, and good luck with the future.
And thank you very much.